Welcome to the 300th episode of the Garlic Marketing Show. I'm super excited to bring this incredible information, these incredible guests to you, and also to start out a new era in the Garlic Marketing Show. First of all, this 300th episode is a mega episode. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to get roughly about 15 of the best marketing experts I could find for professional services. Many of them are for attorneys, but even if you're not an attorney, if you're a doctor, a dentist, in healthcare, any type of professional service can gain from watching this episode. And it's just not one tip. You've got incredible actionable items that if you take action on every single one of these items throughout the next year, I'd be surprised if you don't increase your online profits 20 to 100%. It's amazing. We got stuff on Facebook, YouTube, Google Local, SEO, content, website design, everything you can think of. And it's from a variety of experts, a variety of points of view, what's working best right now. And that's why I went with agency owners as well, because they're not working on one or two, they're working on hundreds of different clients. So not only should you take notes, but you should come back to this video and watch it over and over again. Hand it off to your team, make a checklist, and take action. Now, for the rest of the season, we are going to have a variety of experts. We're going to have experts on everything from building your business and making marketing plans, to sales, to laced in Facebook ads, YouTube, SEO, and we're going to take a new twist, because what I always want to do with the marketing show is not just give you marketing ideas and marketing things that you can do. I also want to show you how marketing affects our lives. So we're going to bring in historical experts, we're going to bring in scientists, we're going to bring in people that know advertising, the history of advertising, and have tons of different shows, tons of different formats. Plus, we are going to be adding lives where you can come in and be a part of the audience and ask these questions of experts. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, make sure to subscribe right now and look down below if you want to get email alerts of when all these amazing things are going to come out on the Garlic Marketing Show. But for right now, what I want you to do is go through and just watch this entire episode. Find out all the amazing things that you can learn, and then prioritize them and decide to take action. And if you really are an action taker, the best part about commitment is when you decide on a time that you're going to take action. So if you're watching this on YouTube, make that commitment. Go down below, make a comment, what you're going to take action on, what you're going to do, and when you're going to get it done by. And then what we'll do is we'll comment on that date just to alert you, to remind you, hey, did you get that done? To be honest, only 5, maybe 10% of you will take action. But that's going to be the differentiator over the next years of who is going to really succeed and dominate their market. It is the action takers. And there's lots of action to be taken here. So without further ado, let's get into all these amazing tips and tactics for the 300th episode of the Garlic Marketing Show. Let's get into, building a personal brand, like professional services. Why should they build a personal brand? And then let's, what can it result in? And let's get into, talking about LinkedIn and using that.
Any one of our clients, whether it's, blue collar service based, white collar service based, whatever, whatever you're talking about. And again, as an agency, as we were speaking about, we're kind of like agnostic. We're not B2C or B2B. We work across the board. I think the number one most important thing is establishing KPIs and then, learning and failing fast to achieve those goals. What's even more important for specifically like a white collar service based business is to build brand authenticity, just by producing really good content. At the core of what we do, usually it's a video that's chopped up 56 different ways and put on Instagram or, Facebook or Google Ads or whatever, on a blog post. That 360 kind of amplification, like the circle of life process or whatever, that that is at the core of our success. But even more important, it's something that we preach to our clients is get out there and build your personal brand and do it in a way that is authentic. I know it's like a buzzword today and it's cliche, but like if there's nothing worse, especially in a service-based business like that, if somebody sees one person on an ad and then comes across the person as a totally different sort of personality when they meet you, to me, it's kind of, there's nothing more off-putting. Mm-hmm. Like I want to see what I get, and I want it to be. And again, I know you're on a video or whatever it may be, or when I get the best way I can explain it, and not everybody's comfortable doing this. When I get out there on my own personal branding, I try to be vulnerable. I'm at a place in my career and my life where, and this wasn't always the case. This is not for everybody. I'm okay with my failures. I in my entrepreneurial journey, there are many times that I have failed. There are many times that I have not done, or I do things differently now that I did maybe 10, 12 years ago. That being said, I'm okay. I've never come across somebody on my LinkedIn feed. And again, I post a lot of content sometimes. It ebbs and flows. I've never come across somebody that's like, wow, you're way too vulnerable. Like you're putting yourself out there, and but that authenticity I think is really important for a brand, and have it actually be you. Like to me, there's nothing that's more powerful than putting yourself out there and having somebody see a failure or see who you really are. It doesn't hurt.
And, I agree with that completely. I mean, the authenticity, the vulnerability, that's what people are going to remember. And how do you go about finding that vulnerable moment and going, okay, this is the thing I need to put out there?
One of my most vulnerable moments over the last year. So October 16th is always a really hard day for me. This past year was the 25th anniversary of my dad's passing. And in July of last year, I lost my mentor. He actually was down in Florida at the Villages suddenly, wasn't expecting it. And I put a video out there just saying, when you're not, I guess at the moment when you're not expecting it is the moment that it becomes the most powerful. I just put a video out on LinkedIn, and it had nothing to do with work. It just like, make sure the people in your life know why they're important to you. Cause I lost somebody and I never got the opportunity to tell him that I loved him. He knew it. He knew me since I was 3 years old, but I never got that like opportunity for closure. And that post was just a simple video of me sitting out on my fire pit outside, and it got like 12,000 views.
Wow.
And I wasn't putting it out there for the purposes of business. There was no content in there that told people about good marketing. It was just a moment in time that I felt something strongly. I put it out there. And sometimes it doesn't need to have the value that you think it has with regards to being strictly business related. Mm-hmm. I think crossing over in that personal connection and getting that vibe from somebody as well is super important.
I agree. And, I think people are scared that it's not professional. People buy from people. Mm-hmm. And if someone, if you put something that's you out there and someone doesn't want to work with you, that's better. Right.
Part of our vetting process as an agency, we do we do an intro, a 30-minute intro with me to make sure that the customer's going to vibe with us. Yep. Then we do an hour-long marketing discovery that establishes KPIs and lets our strategy director kind of get a feel for the potential client. And then from there, that happens all before they ever get a proposal. And that vetting process has provided more success for our agency because it's not that we don't want to be helpful, but if we don't get a good vibe or we don't get a good feeling that a potential client's, goals and the way they work aligns with ours, it's probably not going to be a good fit. And we've saved ourselves a lot of, hassle and heartache. And we can help them find somebody else who might be a better fit for them. But that's more important than finding the right clients, is vetting the ones that aren't going to be a good fit.
What is the thing that an attorney can do right now on a regular basis to make LinkedIn work for them?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we're not talking about having a plethora of time here. So the one thing you can do, if you don't have time to sit down and think, and I'd rather that you do this than create original copy or an original post or a long article or something, because that does take time if you're doing it well and thoughtfully and you're actually giving value. So if you don't have time for that, at least on a daily basis, and this concept of consistency is really important. So on a daily basis, you have some go-tos on LinkedIn, a few people that you admire that are potential clients, groups, even LinkedIn groups. Go in there daily. And, if just go in and look at the threads and the conversations and chime in, put your comment in there. And when I say comment, I don't mean a thumbs up or a smiling face or great point. I'm talking about take a few more seconds, and it doesn't take much, but chime in, add into the existing conversation in the thread and just add something. But, at the very least there, you're engaging. You've actually read the post. I mean, you're respecting the person that took some time out of their day to post. You're creating even better engagement connection with that person and everybody that reads that comment too. So that's one really easy way that you can do on a daily basis to get that visibility, start building some authority and presence. Because I know that on LinkedIn, I just talked to a LinkedIn engineer last week, and they said, do you know that 90% of the people that become clients are not people that you know? They're people that have been watching you and listening to you over the years on LinkedIn, and you've been on their radar consistently. And when they need you, they're going to pull out. They're going to go, oh yeah, Viveca or Ian, or, so you've had that presence. Now, it might not seem like you get immediate return on that, but trust me, that visibility, you will be top of mind when they need your services. So that consistency is really important. I know you're dying to come in and say something.
It's so true, and it's so simple, and but it works. You're just dead on. And listen, if you're paying attention to this and you're a professional and you're like, hey, my client, and you want high-end clients, because every professional tells me that, doctor, lawyer, dentist, plastic surgeon, whoever, you can spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn a day. Don't tell me you don't have time, because I know there's a room you go into that you spend 10 minutes in, that you read something else. So you can just be on LinkedIn and make that comment. And like you said, it's amazing to me how I get that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, I've read this post, 3 years. I've been watching your stuff for 4 years. And I'm like, why haven't you said anything? And there's so many lurkers out there. But
yeah, absolutely. So that consistency and just going on a daily basis, even if it's just 5 minutes, you cut your meditation from 15 to 10, in the morning, whatever ritual you do in the morning, that's a whole different topic, right? But 5 minutes, you've got that. I'm sorry, but you've got that.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it while walking. You can do it while on an exercise bike. You can do it in a car. You can do it on a train.
You can car plays or trains, but you can do it on the fly. Now we have LinkedIn stories, right? So pick up your phone from mobile. So pick up your phone and you're out walking the dog, walking yourself. Pick up your phone and do a short story. Just a thought that you have that could somehow in some way benefit your audience, whether it's referrals to other attorneys or direct to client. Just a little something, and put a little bit of thought into it and do it on the fly.
SEO is a marketing channel with compounding interest. So the more content you produce, the more links you acquire, it starts this waterfall, this compounding effect that can generate tons of traffic to your website. And it doesn't happen all immediately. Many of these dividend stocks don't pay out hardly anything. But once you acquire more and more, it just has this massive effect.
And then it has a flywheel effect. I mean, I'm not going to get big into the case study because I want to get into the content thing. But in your case study, in that longer case study, you talk about the law firm that you got to #1 for car accident attorney, but how it affected how it perpetuated it, right?
Right. And because he was first in, because he created a content framework that was different from everyone else and had multiple experts on the page, by the nature of being different, it automatically stood out. And then it acquired all this attention, these links, and it just separates the gap. And anyone that tries to replicate or copy, it's even more challenging because there's just such this gap that's created by being first in and innovative.
When you're #1 or #2, that's another thing you mentioned there, people link to you. So they keep linking to you, you get more traffic, you get more links, you get more traffic, you get more links, and then, right, you just stay there, don't you?
Absolutely. And that's an interesting point. So Ahrefs, Tim Solo and their team put out a great article recently where they were targeting phrases with paid traffic as a link building strategy. So things like motorcycle accident statistics, that may be a good article to drive paid traffic to, not because you're going to convert a consumer, but because maybe the media and press will link to that article and it will help, your inbound link strategy.
That is genius. That is genius. So so if you're listening to this, you're going to need 2 huge tips here. That one, and now you should, like that article, you should be updating that content, right? That's what you're talking about. How important is updating content, and how do you do it?
The way content marketing is today has completely changed the past, and it centers around what's available on the web. Several years ago, I think it was in 2017, there were 4.5 billion web pages. Today, there are substantially more. So it's no longer a question of, does Google have the content to rank? Is there something on a topic? Most of the topics that isn't unique or innovative are already covered. So what do? And there's a variety of things you can do. So first, you need to structure your team, and you need to have and target those keywords, because the only way that you have the opportunity to rank is to target and create content around a particular subject matter. And that's just one percentage or facet of content creation. That stuff, if you're in the legal vertical, maybe that would be, what are the steps you need to take after a car accident? Well, when you think of content, think of it as like a library. You're not going to post this out on social media and really be seen as a thought leader by answering that question. That's really basic content. But if someone's in a car accident, they can pull from the library that book and read that article, and you can help them. A different type of content is what we refer to as expert content. And I had Neil Patel on the show, and he had some fantastic examples of this. And it's basically where you want to create content that shows you're a thought leader, that shows you're innovative, do surveys, do studies, be different, stand out. Those are the types of content you want to share on social media. Those are the types of pieces that really draw in those inbound links and really make you stand out. So there's a percentage of content you want to make that's just covers the basics. Then you want to have this expert content. And then here's the killer that you're talking about is you want to upgrade your content and refresh it frequently. If you have a car accident lawyer page, it's not, hey, I'm done, I've got the page on my site. You need to update it not on a yearly basis, but on a monthly basis. That's how critical it is to keep your content refreshed and continually try to make it better for the search engine results and the consumer.
And that's why, when you get into something competitive, I feel you need someone that's just thinking about this stuff all the time. You should be understanding it, and you've got a ton of great content on how to understand it, but thinking outside the box on how to upgrade it is important. So what are you all doing on a monthly basis to be upgrading content for clients?
It's a great question. We have a dedicated team for new production and ideation and strategy to come up with those topics. We have a second dedicated team that just does upgrades. So they're refreshing statistics. They are looking for new quotes and citations to incorporate. They'll look and evaluate the formatting of the page, maybe improve the subheaders, because many individuals don't read the full body of text. They'll read the subheaders and they'll transition through a page by just jumping around on the navigation. We're doing all these types of components to really help the consumer find their answer on the page to make it the best experience for them.
I mean, we say, when you're paying for Google ads, you're basically feeding the monster. And once you turn the dollars off, you stop feeding the monster. But SEO, you do it right, you have the right content, and you have a system to continue to add to it, because that's the thing is like, you could be at that 20% jump and increase, but then all of a sudden competitors come out and they're talking about, things that are changing in the market, and you start losing some market share to that audience. So you have to continually do it. But what it typically does is it continues to build upon itself, and creates the businesses that we work with a lot that are in B2B as the thought leaders for the search terms that we're trying to accommodate.
Love it. And so how does the hub and spoke model work? Explain to me how you implement this.
Yeah, so I use hub and spoke because you heard me say the word flywheel, because we think of it in terms of a circle, right? But the center of the circle is really the customer in terms of how you're trying to reach that person, right? And that customer, the way you're trying to bring them into your model is by having a really sound and well-organized website that speaks to all the things that the customer is concerned about. So, for example, if you guys, let's just say for us, for example, we know our funnel, we know what our people are looking for. We have content online about questions that you might have about SEO. We have content online about paid advertising. And we also have a lot of white papers that might be answering questions that people will have after they're doing their initial research. And so the system that we've created that's a hub and spoke for us is that there's enough content out there to catch people when they're starting to search for certain things. Then when they're trying to take the next step and they're trying to understand more about, maybe it's building out an RFP for a website redesign. Well, we have an asset online that's a full guide to creating an RFP for an agency. They put in their name and their information. They download that white paper. They use it to create an RFP. And wouldn't you know, we're right there as one of the potential candidates for us to be, submitting for that RFP. And so we're bringing them into that flywheel and that, hub and spoke model through the website as being the central location for them. And then the data metrics that we get shows us how people travel around that flywheel. So we know how many people came in at the top of the funnel for these key terms. We know at the lead level, for example, before I pick up the phone to call somebody that filled out a form, I know exactly what pages they've already seen. I know how long they spent on them. I know if they came back and they had seen something previously. And a lot of that for us is HubSpot data that we use for lead level data. And it's just tremendous in terms of making sure that flywheel is spinning, which is the analogy that we use to continue to drive new audience into becoming people that are aware of you and deciding to potentially work with you to becoming hopefully customers.
So someone doesn't need to start with a new website to do this, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Well, what would you say would be the first steps to like figuring that out? How would you do it?
Yeah, I have this post that I wrote a while back. It's out on Forbes that was all about basically the things that you would have to do to aggregate the first steps in this. One of the first things is ownership of the data that you already currently have. Reason being, I use the term sharpen the axe because we're really big into making sure that before you start chopping or changing the website or taking guesses about what you need to do, you're first really thinking, let me look at the data to see what it's telling me, what's working and what's not working. So gathering up what data do we have to help us make informed decision, to me, is always the first step. Google Analytics is one of the first places I'll turn to. I mean, if we had anybody called us off the street to say, hey, I think we might be able to work together or we're interested in a redesign, I'm going to ask for Google Analytics access so I could just see what's working, what's not, and point to some key things that might be helpful. I also like to look at the market, and I like to use tools like SEMrush and SpyFu to start looking at the competitors and who is seen as a competitor, what terms does this website rank for currently, to start to get a real pulse of like, where are we, right? We're trying to figure out where we're going. We need to know to get there where we are right now. So get a good benchmark using the data of where you are so that when you make changes, you can measure whether or not they're working. So to me, that is always the first step.
You have to make the consumer feel safe too. Why do we need to make them feel safe? And then what are the key ways of doing that?
Yeah, so good question. So it was interesting to see all of this play out in the last year and a half, and we work with thousands of businesses in every single industry, and really the thread between all of it was and continues to be consumers really having safety as top of mind. If you look at even, so Google gives you tons of data publicly and we get a lot of data privately, but Google Trends you can look at, right? It's a public tool. Google Trends will show you search volume for things. Searches that have the word safe to in them, like safe to travel, safe to go to a restaurant, safe to eat, went up 10,000%, like literally 10,000%. And not only that, it hasn't gone down. It continues to be like, it went down a little bit, but still mostly flat. And searches include a top search. So this is the top searches Q1 of this year. So this is not even peak COVID. This is already tail end. Safe to fly, safe to travel, safe to drink, safe to order food, safe to go out, safe to eat, safe to walk, safe to use, safe to buy, safe to stay, safe to swim, safe to play.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And interestingly, that's been consistent across every industry, and it's been consistent across every country, which very rarely happens. Literally, the top of mind for every person pretty much on this planet for the last year and a half was, is it safe to do this thing? As a business owner, you really have to be cognitive of that's the consumer mindset. Like, let's say you're a swimming pool, right? My kids go to swim, so it's for me an easy example. You're a swimming pool during COVID. How do you get consumers to go back in there, right? They don't even know if it's safe. It doesn't seem safe, right? You're not swimming with a mask on. I could tell you that much. So there's a lot of perceptions you really have to overcome, and a lot of consumer anxiety on safety, and it has to be, as a business, it has to be top of mind. You really have to tell the consumer why it's safe to interact with your business and what measures you're taking to making it safe. And you need to do that before they reach out and ask you, because by the time they're already asking you, it might be a little too late.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. And if they're asking you, that means they've been thinking about it and they've asked Google for the past 3 months and haven't been able to find their answer. Right.
Yeah.
From a technical standpoint, what are some of the best ways to approach this? Because I was always of the opinion too, like when we've done marketing, dental marketing, I'm always like, don't show extracted teeth. When you're doing a lot of this, don't show needles. Don't show the thing that's causing the problem. Show the result. And when I saw everyone going COVID alert on their website, I'm like, I can't imagine this is helping conversion rates. Yeah. So what do you find as best practices for doing that without scaring people?
Good question. So I would not do COVID alert, but I have seen a lot of those across. I've seen it on like Fortune 500 companies, like in Reddit. Literally, I think COVID alert, it would say, right? Like,
yeah. You're like, no, you don't want to associate your brand with COVID.
Yeah, I think there's ways to do it correctly. Well, I literally did a 2-hour session just on the safety stuff at the Small Business Expo. And the 3 pillars I talked about there was, number 1, relieve anxiety. So literally you want to make it as not stressful as possible for people to interact with your business. So maybe COVID alert isn't the right way to approach it. That'll probably increase anxiety a little bit, right? But maybe you put a notice at the top of your website saying, we value your safety, and then you click it and there's more information on what's being done. Number 2, support and uplift. So you want to be as supportive as possible. You don't want to be like, if someone approaches you and says, oh, I'm not comfortable paying for this in person, is there another way I could do it? You shouldn't be like, no, that's the only way we do it. Sorry, that's it. COVID is over already. I don't care. This is the way you do it, right? You want to, as a business, as a brand, as anything, you want to support and uplift, especially right now when so many people are dealing with so much. And then the third one is give up control. And that's a little bit of what we talked about before, is really let the consumer decide on what they're comfortable with, because I think comfort levels are going to continue to be different for everyone for a very long time. So how does that translate to a website? I think a soft message saying we value your safety somewhere at the top would be a good way to approach it. I think similarly in the physical location itself, it should be on the front door. And then what steps you take to really make it safe for them. and then give them options of interacting with your business. If you do not feel safe, let's say a dentist, right? If you have like some kind of dental issue you want a consultation about, maybe I know operationally it's difficult, but maybe offer some kind of virtual, at least like a consultation, right? Before you determine if they need to come into the office or not. Maybe offer off hours, right? Literally in that same notice of what we're doing, you could say for elderly and those at risk, we will do off hours during the evening when it's not as crazy in our office building. I think that's our approach. Unfortunately, I haven't seen as many people do that as the COVID alert at the top, like blinking. But I think that's the move, and that was the move when I presented this in January, and that's the move today in May. That's going to be the move in December. Will consumer behavior change as COVID hopefully goes away? I think it'll change a little bit, but if you think about the people who are now doing online grocery shopping who have never done so in their lives, I think they'll continue to do so. And I think a lot of these consumer behaviors are here to stay.
The legal funnel that I teach, the first part is it's client generation. Okay, figure out how to get clients on, using online. Second part is now you got clients, great. But however, all of a sudden, if these funnels are working, you're getting a lot of clients, but now you have to deal with 50, 100 clients a month. So I also teach how to automate your law firm. So there's a lot of tools to be able to use. Also use a lot of virtual assistant to be able to delegate most of the tasks. Then you automate it. And the third aspect of it is now you automate the system to be able to catch your reviews. Why? Because your reviews becomes the engine for you to be able to, it's a positive feedback loop that feeds the front end. That means it makes the funnel stronger when people are deciding whether they should go with you or not. They're going to look at your reviews. And so the more reviews you have, the more your funnels will work, the more your law firm will be automated, and it just feeds itself. So based on that, I'm sharing what I'm about to share with you is really, really, really valuable. It's one of my secret sauces that I usually share with my students. But you know what, Ian, if your audience is here and they listen to this, they deserve to hear this. So right now I'm sitting with 2,371 Google reviews using this method that I'm sharing with you. Yes.
Wow.
And they're all not all, but 99.9% of them are 5-star reviews. And here's, it didn't happen by chance, by the way, and every single review is real. So how do I do it? So there's two parts. One is the specific script that I use. And second is there's an automation aspect to it. So let's talk about the script. The mistake that most people make is when they ask for a review is they do ask, and they also provide the link for people to leave a review. If you do that, that's too much of an ask. Instead, what you want to do is you want to ask for permission to be able to send the link to get a review. Okay, you ask for permission first, and that extra step, which is an extra step, it actually gets people to micro commit towards you leaving your review. And now at that point, they've kind of pre-committed themselves to actually following through. So I'm going to read the actual script. Feel free, if you guys are listening to this, to copy this script. It works. I've been using the same script for 4 years now. It works really well. So here it is. And I'm reading it. So the first word is first name. You customize their first name. Bob, I'd like to ask you for a favor. Would you please mind taking a few moments to write a review for me? Your comments will help others know what to expect when they're looking for the service I offer. Now here's the important call to action. May I please send you a link to leave a review? If that's okay with you? Question mark. Okay, so what you're doing is you're asking, is it okay? You're trying to invoke that yes. Okay, that yes is much easier to do than getting them to actually leave a review. And then once they say yes, then you send another email and be like, great, thank you so much. Here's the link. And then you provide them the link. And then you also say, you can back it up and say something else that works is, hey, I really appreciate you doing this. By the way, I'll be sure to return the favor in the future if you ever need my assistance in the future. Which is, again, more psychology to kind of put it back on them. If you need my help in the future, I appreciate this review. So that's the first part, the script. So use that script. If you have to go back to listen to this again to copy down the script, go ahead and do that. Second part is there's an automation, which means that there's this request. So what I call is review 1 and review 2. is automated by an email series. So as soon as my clients are finished, they're added to some kind of email campaign drip system. And I use Mixmax for this. That's used instead of Gmail. Or you can use ActiveCampaign for this if necessary. That automatically sends a series of these emails over and over that keeps following up with them to do the ask. And then once they say yes, then I send them sequence number 2 that gives them a link, then gives them a link, there's a link. So if you do that, you have the right script, the right way to do it, and plus you have the automatic follow-up system, you'll probably be able to get reviews from 30 to 40% of your clients.
That's a lot. That's a high percentage. Because it's, usually it's usually 10 to 15%. And people don't realize that. They're like, well, I sent out, and people will say yes, and they will intend to do it. And it's not because they don't want to do it. They forget, we get busy, they get overwhelmed, and we need to remind them. But I love the micro commitment there too. And that's an important, it's one of those weapons of influence, getting small commitment into a larger commitment. And that's genius.
And that micro commitment that you mentioned, Ian, is also ties into what the funnel does. Is you're getting, instead of going for the big ask, just like how lawyers like put up an ad, don't do that. That doesn't work. Instead, you get people to kind of commit towards you, taking very systematic steps towards you until you get them to do the big ask, which is push them to do a scheduled booking or to give you a call. And at that point on, then you could retain them. So that all ties in, that kind of pre-commitment and all these psychology things do work.
And this may be like a back to basics things for a lot of people, but I'm going to talk about it because it just floors me how often we'll go into start working with a law firm and they're just not doing this. People were, we go out and speak at CLEs and stuff too. Right. And it's really the basics of what we call kind of like owning your audience versus renting it. Mm-hmm. And even renting is like, people are spending a lot of money on paid advertising. They're spending a lot of money on Facebook ads. Or, the agencies are writing tons of content for them, SEO, all this stuff, right? They're investing time and money. And if somebody comes to the website and doesn't call, doesn't fill out a form, doesn't hit a chat box, then they leave. You basically, you just rented that person to come to your website and they're gone, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we get somebody to our website and start owning that person longer term? So we want to, control the audience, like you talked about, getting control. We usually recommend, again, back to basics, but basics aren't happening. So let's talk about it. Lead magnets, like checklists, downloadable content, like mini ebook type things, special reports, whatever that, white papers. If you're more business to business, that's a more business to business type term. And then getting into your email list and having a place to put stuff, whether it's a full blown like CRM system, especially in the legal industry, there's some legal CRM specific systems, or it could be like a HubSpot or even a MailChimp. If you want to go lightweight and just start somewhere. But getting that, building these lead magnets, getting them into a list in your email, and then you can send newsletters to them, follow up them, stay top of mind. If somebody came in for a particular reason, you can build drip campaigns, or the word funnel is everywhere, right? Everybody talks about funnels and building funnels, but nobody really knows really where to start. And so getting that email address and then being able to follow up with 5 or 6 emails, because as you mentioned, people are doing tons of searches, and so if they didn't finish up with you, an hour later, they're probably doing another search. And if you didn't come up, they're on to the next person. So if you can get in their email inbox and follow up, because I don't know about you, Ian, but I'm crazy busy. I will go fill out a form, download something, and totally forget about it within an hour. This is going to sound fairly simple, but what I'm trying to say is just go do it, right? The first thing is the amount of email addresses you already have as a law firm, right? Like you have past clients, you have people who came and maybe started but didn't go down the path of becoming a client. Get all these email addresses. Just start there. I mean, you could go from 0 to like 500 email addresses on your email list sometimes, depending on just digging through your history. If you have a practice management software like Clio or one of these products, right? You can just export a CSV and then put it into MailChimp or put it into one of these other tools like, Allmatics, Clio Grow I put on here. It's just some examples. I'm not, saying these are the ones you need to work with, but these are examples of like legal specific CRM type systems that have email capability and email capture and stuff. But MailChimp on the right side, I mean, it's pretty much practically free to get started. So you can always have that, but just dig through those files, get it email addresses and start there. Because now you can even get a newsletter, stay top of mind. You're probably familiar with this, right? Is the amount of people who like will have worked with a lawyer like a year ago, and someone will come and say, hey, I have this problem. Do you know anybody? And they'll literally stumble and forget who they even worked with, right? If you send an email every month and stuff and just stay top of mind, they're like, oh, wait a second, hold on. I worked with somebody great here. Hold on, let me find my email, pull it up on their phone, and you'll be able to forward that on, right? So just getting email addresses from past clients is really important. And then the other thing we recommend doing is, and I mentioned this already, it's like lead magnets, right? Just something simple. And I got some examples here of just, these are some things like last year, somebody put together like a COVID-19 grab and go kit. And this is an estate planning attorney just trying to say, here's a checklist of things you need in the event somebody needs hospitalization, right? We're able to like spin that up in like less than a week, get it out there, something very timely, important. Somebody dropped on the homepage. It's like, oh yeah, no, like I'm curious about that. They drop in an email address, you email them the stuff, and then they follow up with a few things. For them, estate planning is great for drip campaigns because a lot of people, it's not like a oh no, I need a lawyer right now type thing, right? Unlike a DUI, which you might have a like much faster drip campaign. Worksheets are great. Checklists are great. If you've got a lot of FAQ content on your website, a lot of law firms have been, told to write all this content, and frequently asked questions is FAQs. If you've already done that, then pull some of those together and just like the top 5 questions people ask, right? Yep. And put it into a PDF. I mean, go on Upwork, or have your agency do it. Put it in a PDF, get it on your website, and send somebody to that and highlight that on the top of the website to get that email. So now you're doing all this work. Let's keep track of it, right? You got newsletters. There's a immigration attorney, Jim Hacking. He's like great at writing newsletters. If you ever want to see like a really well done newsletter by a law firm and just consistent top of mind awareness for targeted at his market, he's awesome. So that's I always say to send people like, you want to see somebody doing it well. Here's an example of just somebody who captures leads and then sends out a newsletter. And he's not a client. I'm just saying he's a good example. Nice. Here's an example of his newsletter. He does immigration. So he's, showing success stories, talking about, challenges people are having. Obviously, over the last, 3 or 4 years, there was a lot for him to write about when it came to immigration and all the changes that happened like every week, right? So he was sending almost daily emails for a while.
Because you don't know who to pitch, I'm going to show you how to easily find relevant podcasts. So if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you are listening to this and you're not driving or on a treadmill, then you can whip out your phone and kind of do this along with us. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to start with one podcast. You're going to find the one goal podcast that you would love to land a spot on. So for this strategy, you have to know which podcast that is. Don't even worry about looking through the different categories yet. So if you're a doctor, find your favorite medical podcast. If you're a lawyer, find your favorite law podcast. If you are in the health and beauty industry, there's a lot. So if you're in health and beauty, the Skinny Confidential, him and her podcast would be a great one because they're always talking about skincare and health and different things like that. So you find that one podcast, and then you're going to scroll down till you see you might also like. And then you just tap see all. And that's going to automatically pull up all of the podcasts like that one podcast that you want to be on. And then you just start making a list. You start writing down all of those as potential podcasts to pitch because they're like that one. So they're likely to have a similar audience. For this, I used a spreadsheet. And you literally just create the columns of the name of the podcast, the host, maybe you create a column for social media, for the website. And then that's going to be your podcast pitch list to pitch to be a guest on.
Christina, yes. The image you showed there looks exactly like my suggested podcasts. I mean, these are all my suggested podcasts.
No, it's not. Okay, this is why you guys need to watch YouTube. Let me tell you, the Bitch Bible is one of those podcasts. The Balanced Blonde, Lady Gang. Listen, Ian, this example is for those people in health and wellness, the med spas, the ladies looking to improve their skin. These are their
perfect podcasts. For med spas. It is perfect for med spas. It was just funny because I was like, I've never heard of any of these podcasts, and I probably shouldn't listen to them.
And rightfully so. And this will work for literally any niche. I mean, there's a podcast for anything. So you just have to start with that one and find that one, and this will work for you. And then There's more ways. Like this is just one tactic. You can also filter by category. So you want to find the main category that would be a fit for your niche. So another way to search for podcasts is to filter by category. And the first thing you want to do is find the main category that would be a fit for your niche. And this can and will change based on the angle you're pitching. So for example, I pitch a lot under the business umbrella because I talk about marketing, but sometimes I also pitch under family and parenting because I talk about how I built a business from home with kids. So it really just depends the angle you're pitching and the kind of audience that you want to get in front of. So first, you want to find that main category. Again, I do this through Apple because I have an iPhone. And then once you're there, you can look at the top shows, you can look at the new shows, and you can look at the subcategories. I like looking at the new shows just because they're showing up right there under the new shows because they're popular, but because they're new, there may not be a lot of competition with people pitching them. So there's just a little tip when it comes to looking at the new shows. Yeah. And then you can look at the subcategory. So for this example, we will look at careers. And this could work for anything. I mean, you could speak about your career as a medical professional, as a lawyer, as, you know, somebody who builds a med spa. You just have to get creative with the different angles that you're pitching. So go to careers. And then again, you can start writing these down as potential podcasts to pitch. And I use a separate spreadsheet for each audience. So if I think I'm going to talk about how I built my business from home with kids, that'll be one spreadsheet. If I'm going to talk about earning media exposure, that's going to be another spreadsheet because what I write in that pitch is going to be a little different. So that's a way that you can start making a list by looking at categories. So you got to get off the app. You got to search the podcast name and the podcast host and see what you find. You'll find a website. Maybe you'll find social media. So you have to get specific. First, search the website for a specific place to apply to be a guest. Usually this is going to be an online form or a unique email address. And if you cannot find any of that information, then just use the general email or contact form. As a bonus, you should connect on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever the podcaster's social media channel of choice is, and then chat a bit before asking the best way to send a pitch. I know this sounds time consuming, but let me tell you, it makes a big difference. For example, to be a guest on my podcast, Become a Media Maven, I have a form on my website. And I think 9 times out of 10, people totally ignore the form and they just send me an email to my email address. And I always think, okay, well, obviously they didn't do their homework. Like they're not even filling out the form to be a guest. And so when people do fill out the form, it like catches my attention that they're actually paying attention. And then if you send me a tweet or if you connect with me on LinkedIn and you say, hey, I listened to this episode of your podcast. I just applied to be a guest because, you know, I have this expertise or that expertise. Like that sets you apart from everybody because hardly anybody takes the time to do that. So if you really want to be on a podcast and you take the time to connect with the podcaster on social media outside of your pitch, like it's wild. Ian, how many people do that for you?
None. I get at least a pitch a day. And no, I've never seen that.
And if somebody did that, you would be more likely to pay attention to their pitch because it shows you they're actually paying attention.
Yeah, well, exactly. If they were paying attention, I definitely love to talk to them.
It literally doesn't even take 5 minutes to do, and people don't do this because so many people, and this was the same when I worked in TV, they want to send the same pitch to 200 podcasters at the same time, and they're going to be ignored. When instead, if you would just make a list of your top 20 and you got super specific and personal with those top 20, you would book a few of them. But people, they think they have to send out hundreds and hundreds and being impersonal works, and it just doesn't work like that anymore. So these are my tips on getting specific.
So, you know, I'm a big believer that it should be a win-win. Everything you do should be a win-win all around. It's not about deception. It's not about deceiving people or anything like that. It's about delivering value to people. When you deliver value to people strategically who are aligned with you, both in terms of values and the type of business that they have, it will lead to great things. And, a lot of people, when they do a podcast, one of the things they do is they'll ask questions like, what's your favorite movie, or what's your favorite book, or something like that, which is aimed at creating content. That's fine, but it doesn't help with another objective, which is building your network, expanding your network, meeting new people. So I prefer a question around asking people who they respect or who they admire. If they look around their peers and contemporaries, who is doing interesting work or doing good work. And asking a question like that is so wonderful because it's a win-win all around. It gives them an opportunity maybe to acknowledge someone that they haven't acknowledged publicly before, and say something kind about them. And of course, it's an opportunity for you to learn about others who are going to be similarly situated to the person that you're talking to. So assuming you're talking to someone who's a good potential referral partner, strategic partner, client, just similarly aligned with you, they're going to know other people who are similar to them, because people know that like attracts like. People know people that are similar to them, or they admire that, they're aware of the others out there. And so I've just had some amazing people recommended to me. And then, afterwards I'll ask them, I'll say, you just mentioned, Joe Smith, they sound amazing. What an incredible person. Would they be a good person? Do you think that I should feature on the show as well? And of course they'll say, yes, absolutely. Oh man, he's the best. You should talk to him. I'm happy to make an introduction. And some great further conversations and referrals will come from that simple question.
And I mean, can you tell me any examples of where this has worked for your clients?
The clients that it's not easy. It's easy to ask this question. It's not easy to follow through on it.
Gotcha.
But
That's
the clients that follow through on it, for sure, it definitely works well. I'll give you an example from me. Yesterday, I interviewed a founder, serial entrepreneur turned venture capitalist and professor who actually went to my alma mater. He writes for Forbes and a bunch of different stuff. And I interviewed him and I asked that question, and he recommended someone who had founded a business that was in the neighborhood of 400 million or something like that. And he said this person's names is that, I respect and admire the work that he's doing. And then afterwards I did the same thing. I said, this guy sounds great. I'd love to interview him. What do you think? And he said, yeah, definitely reach out. I also reached out. I just, took the bull by the horns, reached out on LinkedIn to this person, and we've got a call scheduled already. This is so, look, I mean, if I were to turn to anyone, client or otherwise, or guest on a podcast or otherwise, and say, hey, April's looking a little light. I could use some more clients. Do you mind introducing me to any $400 million business founders that are in your network? Would you mind introducing? Look, no one's going to do that, right?
Yeah.
But by doing it as a win-win all around, making sure and making clear that you're not doing this to be manipulative. You're not doing this in order to try and, push someone into a sales conversation, but rather to deliver value. It gives you then that opportunity to have a further conversation with that person.
That's awesome. It's simple, but and we talked about this before. Folks, you're going to hear this over. Everyone else that we've gotten on here, it's the fundamental stuff that keeps working and works better and better and better. Because if you keep painting yourself into a corner, trying to look for that trick, and this is kind of a trick. It's a little hack, but it's still a fundamental. It's still asking for referral, but it's in a better way. And I think that is crucial to stick to the fundamentals, right?
Yeah, it's. I would say there are some who might label you doing something like that as a trick or something that, look, it obviously takes some thought to follow through on that. And there is some intention behind it. I'll put it that way. But if you have a hang up over that, and therefore you decide instead what I'm going to do is what I've always done, which is either never ask for referrals or awkwardly ask your clients, hey, can you refer me to your network? As you well know, that doesn't work very well. It does not work very well. Just asking for straight up referrals rarely leads to a good introduction.
Yeah,
I know, because I've tried it for years and years.
It's weird. It's
weird. It's awkward. Look,
Yeah.
the person's, they're only going to introduce you to someone if they know that the other person absolutely needs your services, which is rare that that's going to be the case.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely that you're going to get good introductions out of that. So rather than doing it that way, try this approach. Use it to give exposure to other people, to give some public acknowledgement to great people who are doing good work. And even if it leads to nothing more, you've done a good deed.
The first phase is what you need to do with anything that you're launching, everything in terms of ads, right? So the first phase is, all right, let's make sure organically you have the content. So if I am selling something like Marina, I want to make sure that they have content that's out there written as well as video. Okay, so do that and distribute that via social. So let's get some basics. If people are looking for more information, they click an ad and they go, okay, this is what I need. But then phase 2 of that is, let me do some research. You have to have some explanation, even if it's just on your website. It doesn't necessarily have to be a blog post or anything like that. So make sure that's all set, right? So if anybody has any questions, they can get it there. Then what we do is we go through about 9 or 10 diagnostic questions. And what these are is to develop the ad copy, right? So what we want to do is we want to ask the client, what keeps your potential client or prospect up at night? Like, what's going to make them just be interested in your product or service? What are they actually afraid of, right? So you think of healthcare, obviously there's a laundry list, but even with cars, what are they afraid of about going to make that jump, right? But you want to figure those things out. What might they be angry about? Who are they angry at? Why? You just want to find out what drives them. It's all psychology here at this point, right? Finding out their top 3 frustrations. What's going to really irritate them? Let's solve those things. What trends are occurring not only in business or their lives, right? Let's just figure out like why they're going to need this. Okay, so they want to get better faster in this case. They want to heal faster. They don't want to be laid up. Doctor says 6 to 8 weeks. They want to be like, hey, I want to get in here and get out of there, and maybe I can cut this down to 5 and at least start to resume normal activities, right? So you start to pull some of that information out. Obviously in healthcare, it's like, what do they secretly desire? They want to be healthy again, right? So they're going to get the situation taken care of, but then they also want to have, some things that they know they can do afterwards. So you kind of put that in there as, in this case, and this is not an ad copy and I don't recommend this, but just to simplify it is, hey, use our compression wear, get used to it before the surgery. Then afterwards, this is what it's going to do for you because you want to do this, right? Then you want to talk about how quickly they make decisions, right? Is there a way that you can build in a bias in that ad copy to make a decision faster? Do they have like certain language around, hospital stuff or healthcare issues, right? You have to be careful with that because of regulations, but at the same time, you want to incorporate there. And then last but not least, the competitors. Who else is selling something similar and how are they selling it? And understand like where that person fits in the marketplace, then develop the copy and the ads. And we find short video ads work the best. But then there's a multitude of ways. You're going to have text ads, you're going to have retargeting ads, you're going to have graphic ads, you're going to have even shorter videos like on Instagram and things like that, and just driving the traffic back. But those are the 9 basic questions that we ask to get those diagnostics goes. Then we go into split testing.
Love it. And I mean, it's a pretty simple thing, but here's the thing is everyone starts with, I think they start with the technicals, right? Like, which type of campaign and where, all that other stuff and targeting. While targeting is important, I think simplifying targeting, if you get the messaging down, you can go broad on the targeting, because if you're speaking to the right person, that's the great part about this.
And I think broad now with all the changes of iOS and all the other stuff that people are yammering about, that's going to be huge. Like we tweaked a bunch of campaigns in very beginning of March because they just weren't performing. And not only in this account, but multiple accounts. And we started going broader and talking to our Facebook rep. They were like, here's what you need to do. And we were like, it's too broad. They're like, trust me, it'll work a little bit better. And sure enough, like, 2 weeks in, everything started to click, no pun intended, but everything started to move, and they're getting better numbers. And we have one client that targets as a product for moms, right? But what we went in there was we targeted married and or children involved, or some subset of whatever it is on Facebook, instead of just female and moms type thing, and made it more broad. And wow, like the response has been amazing. And the same thing across the board for everything. That one just stands out because they were killing it with a very super hyper targeted type of audience. But now with a lot of the changes that are coming about, going broader was way better. And we never would have thought of that before. And I think when you think about it and you get into all the technical bullshit, and it is bullshit, I've been doing this for 18 years. The technical side really is just blocking and tackling. Like, it's like, okay, it's set up. Okay, now we can go into this. So we're going to target this person. I'm like, all right, keep it a little broad at first, because what you're going to do is get that information back so that you can refine it. Then you're going to have subsets of all those ads that are hyper targeted, but the broad ones are going to get you your information faster. And I always get laughed at by like some guru. They'll say like, yeah, well, you know, you got to do this. And it's just like laser targeted. I'm like, it's laser targeted crap, because what will come back is like the only response that those people don't want to be advertised to. But if you have somebody whose cousin's brother, aunt, whatever is going through a surgery thing, and they see something like a compression wear, and they're like, this could help Aunt Joan, or this could do this, or this could do that, you start to reach a different audience. Don't get me wrong. The targeting is super key, and the technical things are very, very key. But if you start there, what happens is you get a gobbledygook of stuff when things aren't working. You don't have easy things to swipe in and out, which is the copy, which is marketing 101 for 2000 plus years. It's just like, you got to hit people with their pain and make it actually work to get an actual response.
And to your point, spending that time up front, getting to know your client, getting to know your patient, getting to know your customer as much as possible, getting into their mind. Because if you write that copy that's so specific to them, you can send it out to everyone. The only people that are going to respond are the people that it's specific to. And guess what? These algorithms are going to start rewarding that by showing it to more of those types of people. And I think it's a crucial thing to think about. But I want everyone to start thinking omni-channel. I think that's great.
Definitely. I don't even buy the algorithms anymore. Like, it's funny is because the longer you do this and the better you do it and the more results you get, what you realize is when you look at certain things, and I'm talking like, if you're just spending $1,000 a month, this doesn't apply. I mean, most of our clients are well into the 6 figures plus that they're spending per month. But when you look into this and you start to see the bigger picture, it is totally pay to play, right? And I'm sure if we put this segment out in this clip that I'm saying, it'll probably get the one that's going to get me in trouble with somebody yelling at me, but I don't care. The biggest thing is when you look at it, it's like all this gobbledygook of algorithms and all that. Like, if you want to go hire somebody that's just going to talk to you about algorithms, you can go hire anybody. If you want to talk to somebody about getting results, understand, like, from this perspective and an omni-channel approach is we're going to look at everything, because you can't just focus in on Facebook or Google or even YouTube. You have to take a look at all of this and how it fits into that ecosystem and how your clients buy from you currently. And if you do that part, all the other stuff becomes a heck of a lot easier.
Okay, so we've stumbled across a couple little things in the PI space that is actually a little gold mine, and we've taken that information and now we're translating it into our SEO side of things. So if we start finding a vein in paid, then we'll look to tap that vein with SEO as well. And so far it's been fantastic. And to that point, because at the end of the day, leads and cases matter most for PI firms, right? It's always, I'll put my money in if I can get the return back. For digital right now, it's being in that 3-pack LSA. So you're at the top when somebody searches a phrase, and then in the 3-pack map listing. Okay. Those are the two most visible spots on page 1. And when you have both of them, we've seen leads increase exponentially. And then the other digital tactic would be retargeting of your website. Everything else is kind of noise, in my opinion. Those seem to be the 3 best tactics that work together.
Yeah. Yeah, I would.
LSA ranking the 3-pack and then retargeting the website traffic.
And that's amazing to me too, because how many websites I go to that don't have the Facebook pixel on there, and I'm like, do you hate money?
Yeah. It's cheap, man. Again, done right with the right creative. So just because we're saying to do a tactic doesn't mean you'll have the results if you don't actually spend the time, review the data, and make improvements.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'll give you a perfect example. We just put case stories onto an estate planning attorney's retargeting. That's it. And they've spent $3,000 over the past 6 months and had, I want to say, 150,000 views of their client stories just from website traffic retargeting. And I'm like, what do you think that's worth if your clients talk to 150,000 people?
See, most people will hear that and they'll be like, oh, well, I'll just throw up my 30-second commercial,
My TV ad.
It's like, no, it doesn't mean that you'll have the same result.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Right.
yeah. It needs to be, yeah, exactly.
And I also wanted to elaborate just a little bit on something that Will touched on. He was talking about how, you know, we've found this little aspect of it that's being overlooked. And I think just to give you a tiny bit more insight into that, and I don't want to give away the entire thing because I know some of my competitors listen to your show. But you got to think about the fact that when people search for a particular service, how they search for it, how Google conceives of the concept, and how you think of it aren't always the same thing. And so there's like, I almost in my head imagine it like a Venn diagram where like they don't necessarily always overlap, right? So PI attorneys are constantly talking about, well, I want truck cases, or I want car, or, you know, catastrophic, or whatever the thing is that they happen to specialize in. But that isn't necessarily how someone else searches or thinks of what you do. And it gets further complicated when you factor in that Google may not necessarily understand what you do by case type and match it up perfectly with how the consumer thinks of it. Mm-hmm. Right? So there's these areas that exist that where if you can figure out how those things align, you can target some areas that a lot of people aren't really capitalizing on.
Yeah, phrases used last year aren't necessarily the phrases being used this year and in your market.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's really, you know, this, I always talk to people about, it's understanding those situations that your prospect's in, understanding that I was just talking about this, like good marketers, you know, market to demographics, really good marketers, avatar, but the best marketers to that moment. Right.
Yep.
And really just nailing that down. It's so important. I think that's a very, very important thing to understand. And it's where the big opportunities are. I mean, we found so many opportunities like that over the years with video, and it's like, no one's even touching the search, but it's not getting thousands of views, but it's a highly valuable search. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we saw it in the personal injury space. Once again, I'm not going to give it away because we did videos for clients. They rank #1. They get a ton of phone calls for it. You know, so, but that's where working with an SEO company versus just trying to get #1 for one term, right, is important.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why the success to our business, we categorize it into 3 areas, and it's in order of priority. 1 is the relationship. 2 is results, and then 3 is reporting. So it's our 3 R's to success.
Really, really great product management folks and product developers really know that this is true. And it's really concentrating more on the behavior rather than what people are wanting. And asking the questions about what they're willing to pay for, and really identifying what the problems and pain points that they're experiencing, not necessarily the features or functionality or the product that they want. And those are 2 fundamentally different things.
Yep.
It seems like such common sense for you and I to sit here and talk about it. But common sense isn't so common all the time. You know, that's just kind kind of where we are, but people ask, what do you want? Instead of what are your problems, and then thinking creatively of how to solve the problem. The iPod's a great example of that.
Yeah.
When Steve Jobs, created the iPod, there were other alternatives that had better quality or more storage or other things out there. You had Walkman and Discman, where you could easily get music on and off the devices, but they were clunky and heavy, and when you were active, the quality got disrupted of both of them. And cassettes were, well, not real high quality anyways. But there were other MP3 players out there as well.
Yep.
And what Steve Jobs did was he listened to what the problems were, and that's that people didn't use those devices very much when they were out doing active things. And he realized that he needed to create something that had a lot more storage capability, with the ability to get music on and off of the device a lot better and faster than the other MP3 players at the time. And the brilliance of it as well was the way that he then described it from a marketing perspective. 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Oh yeah.
Nobody had a device ever that was like that, and they knew exactly what it was, and we all lined up to rush out and to buy it because it was small, it was easy, it was portable, and it solved what our problems were of why we couldn't use them when we were out doing active things.
Yep.
So
genius.
Yeah, and that's where you get into looking at what the needs are that stem from the problems and the pain points that the consumer has, and concentrating your questions around that rather than just asking them what they want. You have to ask them what they want to feed into the flow of the conversation and to have a productive conversation. But spending a lot more time on what are the biggest problems that you face when you're doing X, Y, Z and things. And the example of the doctor it was when you have a medical emergency, what are the biggest problems and pain points that you face? The same thing was true when I was helping with the digital transformation at Waterhouse Securities and TD Waterhouse as we were moving through the first phase of online trading over 25 years ago. And that doesn't change no matter where we are in the curve of what we're going through. It doesn't change in what market you're in, what industry or what products you're selling. If you know what your customers' problems are and you find better solutions, ideally that are at a better cost point than what the competitive solutions are, you can find all the business in the world and not have to really deal with nearly as much competition as you do otherwise.
It comes on, we talk about all the time, fundamentals. It's fundamentals, and everyone goes for the shiny object, like, oh, TikTok, YouTube ads, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but do you know where your customer is and what their problem is?
Right.
What the real problem is.
Yep.
Because I talk to law firms, they're like, well, I answer my phones. And I'm like, well, when someone's first calling you, they expect you to answer your phone.
But the question is in that circumstance, Ian, is really, do they want to pick up the phone at all?
Yeah.
Or is it better to have something online where they can book a meeting with you at a time where they're going to talk to you directly instead of your paralegal or your assistant, and they feel more comfortable with that sort of a situation, along the way. It's really understanding what are the channels that people want to interact with you as a service provider or a product company. And then how do you create better channels? Like those sort of fundamentals are easy, cheap things to fix. And then people are out spending boatloads of money on things without understanding whether they're even in front of the right customers or providing the right messages that interest people. It's back to the blocking and the tackling. It really is.
Yep, it is. And I think so many people, like you said, assume that they know what their customer wants, assume that, and maybe they did this market research 20 years ago. And like, well, things have changed. I don't think there's a company that shouldn't be doing market research right now at some level, right?
Well, and it's just a great relationship management thing to get back out in front of people and use the pandemic as an excuse to reconnect. picking up the phone to a long time customer and just saying, hey, I haven't spoken to you in a long time and really in depth. How is your family and what's going on? And, you get into relationship businesses and we've forgotten how to have real relationships and how to ask the right questions. But then that naturally leads to what's going on and how can we help? What are you doing differently in your patterns and your behaviors? How come you haven't stopped in to say hi yet? Is there something that's wrong? And you may find that, you have a customer service problem that needs to be addressed or fixed that you just didn't know about, that's pushing away even your most loyal long-term customers along the way. So even if you're not doing real deep, real formal market insight studies, still that relationship and the conversation is invaluable.
Yeah. And you get that information, and if you can't figure out what to do with it, you call up Erik, right?
Right. Or if you don't know how to structure, how to put the surveys together, or you need some help because you're too busy keeping the lights on, the doors on right now. I think that's the interesting thing is I'm somebody that just loves to help people, and I found a niche where I have a background that kind of prepared and trained me to do this in a place that I really love doing things, and I can make a little bit of money along the way. But the biggest thing is we just love helping people. And a lot of this is common sense and fundamentals. And then some of it is there's some secret sauce of doing it the right way and sequencing things the right way and reallocating assets, because resources are always tight.
Yep.
What are the things that aren't working right now that maybe you should be putting on hold or getting rid of altogether, and then reallocating this for something that's a higher priority and more important right now, which is getting back in touch with the customers and finding out what their real needs are now and in the future.
Besides budget, I mean, budget's a big one, but you got to have good creatives and good copy. Like, you got to have good videos, right? Like, you preach all the time, and you do. Videos, any images and stuff, they got to be brand centric, follow the brand. You got to have good copy. But there's a big misconception with Facebook ad copy, and that is you can use emojis in Facebook copy, which is awesome. I'm not a big emoji guy. I don't use emojis, but we do in Facebook ad copy. And it needs to be super simple. Like you're talking to like a sixth grader, right? It needs to be words that people recognize immediately, because the average watch time for a video right now on Facebook is 6 seconds.
Yep.
That's it. That's the average watch time. So they're making a decision within a couple seconds, and what you write in your headline and maybe what you have in your image or video needs to be something that they can instantaneously recognize to be able to make a decision on what they're going to do and recognize, oh shoot, maybe I should look at this because it says whatever it says, in your copy. So it needs to be simple. Depending on the offer, I would say if you're running an expensive offer, the longer ad copy is probably better. If it's 10K plus, if your offer is going to be 10K plus, there should be longer ad copy there. Test both short and long. But, if you're doing a B2B thing where your offer's 10 grand or something like that, then your ad copy should be longer. Keep it simple, not a bunch of like industry jargon in ad copy, just simple and concise. So
yes. And it's interesting. I was literally just talking about the first 6 seconds with someone. We were watching, someone was like, oh, I've got videos. And I'm like, and I watched them. I'm like, I'm 20 seconds in and you haven't told me what you do.
Right.
You haven't hooked me at all.
Yeah.
You don't have videos. You have a waste of time there.
Yes.
And it's so important. And it's funny. It's not, we call it the Motown philosophy here, because when they made, I was watching the documentary with Barry Gordy, and every song that they had in Motown that was a hit, they spent days on the first 5 seconds of that song.
Right. Yes.
In a room, days. It wasn't it wasn't like, oh, someone just came up with this, I heard it through the grapevine. It's like days, and it takes time and effort. That first 5-10 seconds is so important.
Yeah. And I will say, one video, you could do 50 videos, right? One video could change your life and your business forever. It really can.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that soundbite everywhere.
There you go, for you especially.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So speaking of changing lives forever, you're working with a tax attorney. Tell us a little bit about the success you've had with him.
Yeah, so he came to us, and actually the only reason why we worked with him is because he wants to spend a lot. Like, he was like, guys, I will spend as much as it takes to convert leads, right? That's like music to my ears, because then I can go to him and I can say, okay, cool. Well, we're going to spend $400 a day or whatever. Now, my first question to him when he came to us was, how much is your final offer? So when you get somebody on the phone, right, when he has a consultation with a business owner, how much is it? That's to me the biggest thing. His packages start at $12,000 and up, right? So what that means is, if I expect a lead to come in, a good quality lead, and to pay for a $12,000 offer, because we got to work backwards here when we're setting up Facebook ads, I've got to be spending a pretty big amount to bring that qualified lead in, right? Mm-hmm. And the way the auction works at Facebook is, the more you spend, like, the higher priority you get in the auction. So if I'm only spending $20 a day, guess what? I'm like way down with the losers in the auction, you know? But if I'm spending $300, $400, $500 a day, my ad is then being served to those people who I really want, the upper echelon person that I want to target in the audience. And we're getting leads for him roughly between $100 and $200. Okay. Now, some of you may think like, oh my gosh, that is so much. It's not actually, because if we can get him through the door at, let's say, $200, and he converts that lead, he's got a very good conversion rate once he gets him on the call. That's the other thing too, is like, what's your conversion rate when you get an attorney or when you get a business owner on the call? He's like, oh, my conversion rate's about 75%. 75% of the people I talk to will work with us. And I'm like, dude, this is going to be easy for us, because we just got to get them to schedule an appointment. But if your offers, you know, I would say even in the realm of like 5,000 and up, especially if it's a digital product, or, you know, it takes your time, or you have to talk to people, you could still pay a couple $100 for a lead and your ROI is massive on that. Right. And right now we're converting about 7 to 10 leads a month from Facebook ads. So imagine how much money he's made in the last 6 months that we've been working with him. We're converting an average of, you know, 7 to 10 people at 12K a pop. Right. Yeah. And people say Facebook ads don't work. It's all about the creative, how you talk to the audience, what audience you're targeting. And if you get that right person through the door, dude, it's awesome, you know, and it works.
And like you said, you have to have conversion on the back end, right? Yes. And when you say 75% of the conversion, you're talking about cold leads, or like warmed up leads, not referrals. Because I think that's another point too, is people are like, oh, I close 75% of the people I talk to. I'm like, but if they're all referrals, they're pre-sold, right? And
you probably they're already sold on you.
Yeah, you should be closing 90% of those people.
Yes, yeah, 90 or 100, you know? Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and these are cold. They've never heard of this guy before. Caveat too, this is only in California. It's not even a nationwide thing. It's just in California, you know? So, you know, at first I was like, man, are we going to be able to do this? But then he kind of gave us some numbers of how many businesses are in California, how many businesses are in tax trouble in California. And it's just a massive amount. So, so it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Yep. So, you know, you were talking about the budget, and I think determining the budget, how you spend the budget these days is very important. You know, one of my first questions is like, that $400 a day, should I just then spend $400 a day, 1 day a week?
No. Yeah. I mean, like for him, for example, we're doing 400 a day.
Okay.
Right. We're getting a lot of leads. Not all of them convert. We're getting a lot of leads through the door. But like I said, 7 to 10 of those are booking a call and converting. You know, that's a pretty massive number. I mean, you know, the number of leads, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things without looking at any numbers, you'll probably say, oh, that's super low. It's not super low when you're selling a $12,000 product.
Yeah.
You know, and you're converting 70% of those.
No, it's not super low. And and that's, and then if you have a good funnel, good follow-up, that because the tax isn't like personal injury. It's not like criminal defense where they need that, that help now. There's a lot of those people that maybe a year, 2 years from now are going to convert. And that's important.
You would think it would be harder to bring those leads in then, right? If they don't need immediate help, but it's all in the way you word it, your creatives. And then of course, what really helps is that person, that the attorney on the phone with these people, talking to them about why it's important they work with them. So
to your point, those people are actually, because I've worked in tax, those are procrastinators. Getting these people to take action. It's not like selling a widget online. These people do not want to take action. They want to hide from this problem.
We all do. I hate taxes, man.
I know. No.
Yeah.
And people that have back tax problems really hate taxes.
Yes. Yeah. And they're big avoiders. So yeah.
And they're big avoiders.
Yep.
And so how did you go about determining the budget? Like, I mean, you talk about total lifetime customer value, which is very important for people to understand, and determine based on that. But how did you determine how you started and how did you grow that budget?
Yeah, so you really have to look at like the ads he was running before and what the lead cost was before we came in. And his lead costs were actually a lot higher. So he was used to a higher lead cost. So we actually brought his lead cost down quite a bit. But what I look at is final price point, $12,000. And then you're looking at what type of person you're targeting. We're targeting business owners here. So they're going to be harder to get in front of. They're busy. Like you and I were super busy. We're business owners. I'm not going to read a 4-paragraph email. I'm just going to read the first couple lines and then like go to the next one, So these guys are super busy. So you have to take that in consideration. But really it's the final price point, right? Normally what Facebook suggests is you spending twice what the final price point is, which in this case doesn't make sense. You're not going to spend, $30,000 a day, to do that. But you also have to look at his past lead costs. So what he was getting before were around $300 a lead. And I thought, okay, well, if he's getting leads for around $300, I know for sure I can lower that cost because we're going to be running some good ads. So, I would say a $300 budget is about the formula that I want to see because that's kind of what he was getting leads for in the past. So we started off at 300, and actually now we're around 500 a day. But that was a good starting point, right? Because you can't spend $50 and expect a business owner to come in and buy a program for $12,000. It's not going to work, So depending on that final price point, I would say anything over $5,000, you got to be spending $100 a day plus.